everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another clearing the backlog video. Yes, we've got some Custodes to do here on the tabletop, and as you can see, we've got a fair bit of admin to get through. Now the reason I'm doing these is because I want to finish off a 2,000 points list of Custodes. I've done the other, like, guess 1,000 points or whatever, but they're all finished, and so this is all that remains to get us to 2,000 points. There are more Custodes to come, but I figured we'd do all three of these in one video to finish off the force. Now, as mentioned, we have that admin to get through because we've got some different priming going on. As you can see, we've got 5 Custodians here with sword and board. We have a Galatus Dreadnought, and we have a Caladius Grav Tank. Now, the Caladius has been primed in Chaos Black, and then been primed with Retributor armor over the top. As you can see, I haven't done it on the turret because most of this is silver. It's only this panel and this panel here that are gold, so I left that as black and then we'll paint the gold over the top of it. These have been primed in Grace here because that's what the rest of my Custodes have been done, as has this Dreadnought. I also don't have the base for this because, as some of you will know from the live stream, we don't have the flight stand just yet. So with all that in mind, we're going to be painting all of this up at the same time. We're going to first get everything done in gold. And that's what we're going to do in just a second. So I will be back with my paints and my brushes, and I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so as mentioned, first colour is going to be some thinned down Retributor armour. And we need to apply this over the top of these side panels of the Caladius Grav Tank's turret. I'm just going to give this a quick little dust with my medium shade brush. Seemed to be a little bit of extra dust in between takes just appeared there. So we're going to take some thinned down Retributor armor and we're going to apply this over top. Just like this. Now these panels are going to be red, but we want them to be that lovely shiny red. So we want to get this Retributor armor all over the top, and because we're painting over a black undercoat, it's going to take 2 thin coats to get it to a nice strong consistent gold. So there's our first coat. Then we're just going to leave that to dry, and what we're going to do is we're going to pick up our Custodian Guard. We will do the other panel as well on that, of course. And we're going to start applying this Retributor armor over the top of all of the armor, including their shields. Just like this sort of thing. Like that. We are of course going to apply this over the rest of the armor, and we can also apply this over the bits that we want to be gold on the weapon, because unlike the Guardian spears, there's not too much that will make it difficult, if you see what I mean. There's not like all that swirly stuff that you have on the frames of the Guardian spears. So we're going to get this over the top of every gold detail that we need to on the guard. The only thing you probably won't do at this point is the swirl here, which you can do now, but it's inevitable that you probably make a mistake with the black afterwards, or the kind of the detailing on the glove, which you can't even really see from this angle, but there is some just in there, like that, because again we might make some mistakes with the Cygor Brown when we come to it. Spoiler alert. Then we have our Galatus, which I haven't put on his painting handle just yet. There we go. So similarly, we're going to apply this over the top of all of the Galatus's armour. But what we're not going to do is apply this over the top of this shoulder, because the box art, that one is red, but we're not going to be doing that in a metallic red. We're going to be doing that one in a matte red, like we did with our Achilles, just to make them match. However, they won't completely match. But what we will do is we will also apply Retributor armor over the top of the entirety of this shield. So again, it might take 2 thin coats just because of the size of that detail. So with our gold all applied, as you can see, across all of them, don't worry if it's a little bit of a slightly different colour on the Caladius. It will be, just by the very nature of it. But instead of kind of relayering all of the gold on the Caladius, what we are going to do, because that part will come a little bit later, is we're actually going to add some shading next to all of the gold. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll know exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be taking a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Fyreslayer Flesh and Contrast Medium. And we're going to be applying this over the top of all of the gold details. Now, this is a good point on the Caladius to figure out what is in fact going to be gold and red. So for example, just getting that panel there all shaded. Like so. Perfect. We'll do the other one as well. Like that, and then we move on to the tank itself. Now, all the areas that are going to be gold are pretty much the top part of the tank, and then we've got silver and red going on in here. And the good thing to do would be to have the box art available to you as well, but we do have the kind of this section of the tank as well that is also going to be Fyreslayer Flesh. Now, what I would recommend, well, it's not going to be Fyreslayer Flesh, it's going to be gold. So what I'd recommend is doing the underside of your tank first. You can see, because we're going straight over the Retributor armor primer, it takes a little moment to stick. You see how it pulls back a little bit, but after a couple of passes over with the brush, it does eventually hang about. Now, to avoid that, you can, as I mentioned, you can, if you want to, you can paint the entire thing with Retributor armor out the pot. But the whole point of priming it this way was so that we didn't have to do that. We only had to do that in certain areas. So, as you can see, it just takes a little bit of perseverance and it finally gets there. So, do the entirety of the underside of the tank. Bits that are going to be gold, so this kind of central section, this area along here is all going to be silver, because that's all the kind of workings of it. We get this all over. We do this over the top of the fins as well. And then you can just leave it be for a bit. That, and then just come up the side here, do this back portion like so. We can do the whole of the back portion just so we get it nice and consistent like that. but just have fun with it. Take your time. We're going to do this across the Guard as well, and the Dreadnought. And so once that's done, we'll be back in a minute. Well, probably like an hour. So with that shading all applied to all of the Guard and to the Galatus and to the Caladius as well, all over, as you can see, what we're now going to do is exclusively to the Caladius and to the Dreadnought is we're going to paint in the silver details. We're not going to do this on the Guard just yet because we don't need to. But for example, here on the turret, we want to start applying this over the top of, well, pretty much everything that remains on the turret. Just like this sort of thing. Like that. We will of course do the rest of it, but on the tank itself, what we also want to do is we want to apply this over pretty much all the remaining details on the tank as well. So we're going to go in here, for example, over the top of the engines, on these turbines. I'm going to paint this around the inner rim, the jet turbines at the back here, the guns at the front, the underside, the cables, all of that kind of stuff. So for example, under here, all of this area to do. That sort of thing. So we're going to go around and do that on the Caladius. However, on the Galatus as well, what we're going to do is we're going to apply this over the top of all of the kind of remaining mechanical details. So we're looking for inside the joints, just like that sort of thing. We've got these engines on the back here. We've got the blade of the sword. And so on and so forth. And we're just doing this now on these because when we come to do our next parts for the gold, we can use that as a corrective layer if we make any mistakes on the gold for these bits. However, I don't need to worry about that so much on the Guard. So with all of that Iron Warriors applied to the tank and to the Dreadnought, what we're now going to do is we're going to shade all of it. And we're going to shade all of it using some Cygor Rage Shade. I'm going to apply this over the top of all the silver. Before we embark upon the great adventure that we'll be doing all of the gold. Again. So with that now done, as you can see, we've got the shading all over. It's looking pretty cool. So it is now time to return once again to Retributor armor. Now this is where we're going to bring in everything here. This is going to probably take the second longest part. But what we're going to do here with the Retributor armor is we're going to use this to now relayer all of the gold, just avoiding any of the recesses. So I'm just going to start just here. And this is going to include the parts of the armor panels that are going to end up as red. So on the Caladius, it's going to include the kind of, well, the main kind of armor panels of the turbines, such as this one just here. On the Galatus, it's going to include the shield. On our Custodes, it's going to include their shoulders. As always, just take your time. You don't need to do any of the kind of really fiddly bits. We're just looking for the wide open panels here. So with that Retributor armor reapplied, we now have these beautifully shiny but also wonderfully shaded Custodes, as you can see here for our Guardians. We've got two more here, of course. Looking great, looking fabulous. And we have our final Guardian, as well as this guy, who for some reason I've taken off the mount. I'm not entirely certain why I've done that, but I have. We'll put them back on in just a second. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to now put all of this to one side, because we're going to work on the tank, because it's got a couple of unique things we're going to do on the tank to what we're not going to do on the other 6 models. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some Iron Breaker, and we're going to use a dry brush here. I'm going to do a dry brush of Iron Breaker over the top of all the silver. And the reason we're doing this now is because, well, there's actually not a whole lot to do on the tank, as you can see. Here it is. So we're just going to demonstrate this on the turret. So we're just going to start dry brushing this over the top. Of all the silver details. So with that all done, what we're then going to do, still uniquely to the tank, what we're going to do is we're going to take Canoptech Alloy, and we're going to use this to now dry brush all of the gold. So with that all done, what we're now going to do is we're going to bring in the Dreadnought again, but what we're going to do is they're going to do this kind of deeper metallic red that we've got going on. So the colour we're going to be making is a roughly 2 parts Lamian medium to 1 part Flesh Tearers red mix. And we're going to be applying this over the top of the details that we want to be this kind of lovely, kind of gorgeous dark red. So this is going to be armour panels on the Caladius here. That sort of thing. It's a bit patchy. So what we're going to do, just going to wash the brush, grab a bit of more Lamian medium, and pop that into the mix. Then we're going to go in here, just kind of move it around to smooth it out. Like that sort of thing. Similar to that there on the turret. We're going to be doing this on the large panels of the tank. Which is where I fully anticipate it to go a little bit more patchy. So it's just quite hard to cover an area like this. In a satisfying way. We're going to do the best job that we can, and then we're going to do a second coat on the large panels on here. However, as mentioned, we're also going to be applying this over the top of the front of the shield. Now don't worry if you get this on any of the kind of decorative bits. That's okay. But again, similarly, if you need to, you can do 2 coats here. So here's the shield after 1 layer, but then if we do the second layer of the same mix, you can see it just starts to smooth things out. Similarly, here's our Caladius. Again, we're going in with that second layer. So after our second coat, we just need to kind of smooth it out just one last time. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some corn red, we're going to thin it down, sort of 8 or 9 parts water. We're going to create almost a glaze consistency of the corn red. And we're going to apply this over the top. And this is just going to smooth out any of those final inconsistencies that we have. So with that now done, what we're going to do is we're going to add that kind of blendiness that goes on these large panels. So the colour that we're going to do is we're going to take a roughly 2 parts Lime Medium to 1 part Wyldwood mix. And we're going to apply this in a kind of an arc around the bottom of the panel. So we're just going to get in there. Like this. Then we're going to wash the brush, touch off the water, then we're going to give it the blends. Like that. I'm going to do that 2 times in exactly the same way on all 4 panels. Similarly on the shield, what we're going to do is we're going to do the bottom half of the shield. So we're going to take our Wyldwood mix, apply this like that. Bring it across around about the halfway mark. Make sure that we've blocked it in. Then we're going to wash the brush, turn it around, and give it the blends. Like that. I'm going to do this twice as well. And finally, after those 2 coats, what we're going to do is we're going to take a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Blood Angels Red and Ard coat, and then we're going to use 4 or 5 parts of Lime Medium to really thin it down to create a really nice thin paint. And we're then going to apply this over the top of the whole thing. So with that done, our Caladius is functionally finished. There's just a couple of things left to do, like there's a viewing slit there and there's a laser up here, but for now we can pop this to one side. Now, continuing with red details. Our shield is also finished, mostly. There's a couple of little highlights to do, and I've gone in and I've done the kind of the reapplying the gold just here on the trims. As you can see, it looks really nice and fancy. So what we're going to do, continuing with the red just for now, is we're going to take Baal Red and we're going to apply this over the top of the shoulder. And this is because we did this on the Achilles. And I want them to match. Although they're not going to 100% match because there are a couple of little differences, like for example, the legs. They are gold on this guy. And this shoulder is the one that's red, and the other shoulder isn't black, but you get it. So with that all done, I'm going to pop that to one side and wait for it to dry. And still continuing with red, we're going to take some Blood Angels red now, and we're going to apply this over the top of all of the bits that we want to be red on our Guardians. So this is going to include the plumes, the helmets. It's going to include the skirt of our Not a Warden. Basically had this plan when I was building this army, that we would have many units of 3 guards. They would each be led by a man wearing his pajamas. But rules change. So instead we're back to 4s and 5s. And the men with skirts mostly have been repurposed into wardens. But this guy, who's over here, he has a sword and shield which wardens can't take. Now, enough of story time, because what we're also going to do with this Blood Angels red is we're going to apply this over the top of the kind of flat spacings on their shoulders. It doesn't matter if you get this on some of the gold, because we haven't highlighted it just yet. So you can just go back in and correct it. So with that all done across all of the Custodian Guard, whilst we're waiting for that to dry, what we're going to do now is gather up our Galatus, whose Baal Red should be dry, and we're going to take some Flesh Tearers Red, and we're going to apply this over the top. So with that done, at least for now, we are free of doing any red. So we're going to move on to the black. And the colour we're going to be using for this is some Black Legion. We're going to be applying this over the top of the cable, just here, on our Galatus. Like that. Oh, just a little tiny bit just in there. And we're also going to apply it on the Galatus over the top of the little grip just in here. Like that. However, we're not done with the black, because of course we have our Custodes as well. So, Black Legion is going to be applied over the top of any of the soft details in the joints. Like that. And we're also going to apply this over the top of the casing of the sword. With all those Black Legion details now applied, we're then going to take some Cygor Brown. I'm going to apply this over the top of any leather. With that Cygor Brown all applied, we're then going to take some Akhelian Green. And we're going to apply this over the top of the sword blades. It's just on the guard. We're not working on the Dreadnought right now. The Dreadnought is actually already at Warhipster battle ready. With that Akhelian Green applied, we then take a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Contrast Medium and Leviadon Blue. I'm going to apply this towards the base of the blade, coming up to round about there. Then we're going to wash the brush, touch off the water, and then we're going to blend it into the Akhelian Green. Get that lovely fade through the weapon like so. And of course we're going to do this on both sides. With that then done, we're then going to take some Volupus Pink. I'm going to use this, not that much, that's way too much. We're going to use this to paint in all the grips on the Misericordias, the swords, and the shields. With that then done, exclusively to this guy, we're going to take some Guilliman Flesh. I'm going to apply this over the top of his face. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Iron Warriors. I'm going to apply this over pretty much all of the remaining details. There are a couple of ropes that are not going to be silver, naturally, but we're going to do them at the same time as when we shade all the silver. So with that silver all applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Nuln Oil. I'm going to use this to shade the white ropes, like that, and the silver, and any black details. With that Nuln Oil all applied, there is one last base coat to apply, and that is to pick out all of the bits of gold that we haven't yet kind of corrected. So, for example, here on our Dreadnought, we've got all of this detailing on the shoulder. So we need to pick this out. Like that sort of thing. But on our Guardians, we also have little areas such as the Imperial Eagles on their gloves, and any swirlies on things like the Misericordias. And so with that then done, we take some Fyreslayer Flesh. We don't need to thin this down. I'm going to use this to shade the gold on this shoulder, but also the shoulder itself. Just add a little bit of extra darkness in there. Which in the other video for the Achilles, I believe we did that with Agrax Earthshade, but this will be absolutely fine. If you're following along at home, that is. So with that done, our Galatus is now what I would call a Warhipster battle ready, and all of our troops are now what I would call a Warhipster battle ready. And they're all looking very, very cool. Very, very nice. Again, we're not having to worry about the tank because we're mostly finished with the tank. There's only gems and decals left to go on the tank. But before we get to that, we've got to obviously get these guys up to the similar level of the Caladius. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start by doing some highlights. The first of these is going to be a roughly 2-part Stormhost Silver to 1-part Retributor Armor mix. And we're going to be using this to highlight all of the gold. Now, this is going to take quite a while because, well, there's gold is our predominant color, of course. So what we're just going to do is we're going to be very careful. We're going to take it a model at a time. We're going to pick out all of the edges. Once that's all done, these guys will really start to sing. So with all of those gold highlights applied, as you can see, it massively elevates the models and they just look absolutely fantastic. There's two of our guards. Here's the Dreadnought and the guard. Here's another one of the guards. And of course, our Warden Guard. They just look absolutely fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue with the metallics. I'm going to take some thinned down Iron Breaker. I'm going to use this to highlight all of the silver. So with all that Iron Breaker applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Evil Sun Scarlet. And just on these two, we're going to highlight the robe and the red details on this guy. So we're going to take that thinned down Evil Sun Scarlet and we're going to start just here on the shield. Now we don't need to go into the brown areas. That's absolutely fine. We can just do this top area. Just like that. And of course we will do the shoulder too. And so with that done, we're then going to take a tiny amount of Fire Dragon Bright. And we're going to use this to pick out the sharpest points in the robe and on that shield and shoulder. Now we haven't done this on the plumes because it doesn't need it. We want them to have that kind of slightly deeper red. So with the red all done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Dawnstone. I'm going to use this to highlight all of the black details. So with those black details highlighted, what we're going to do is we're going to take a tiny amount of Blood Angels Red and we're going to apply this over the top of the eye lenses of our Dreadnought. So with that done, we can actually finish off the Dreadnought by taking some Talassar Blue. And we're going to apply this over the top of any lenses and gems. But we will also do this on all of our guard as well. So we've got the two little lenses up there. Got a little gem just here. There actually aren't too many on the Dreadnought. On a quick hunt for some more. Yep, there's another one there on that shoulder. Sneaky gems. Hiding everywhere on the Custodes. There we go. So that is a finished Galatus Dreadnought. So we can pop that to one side with the Caladius. But, as mentioned, we are going to also take this Talassar Blue. I'm going to use this over top of all of the gems on our guard. of which there are many, and they are scattered. So with that all done, we're now going to take some thinned down Mournfang Brown. I'm going to use this to highlight the leather details. With that Mournfang Brown now applied, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the swords. Now, the colour we're going to be using first for them is some thinned down Temple Guard Blue. And we're just going to use this to highlight all the edges on the swords. With that Temple Guard Blue applied, we're then going to take some Baharoth Blue. I'm going to use this to highlight the cutting edge of the blade, not all the way along. Pick out the power nodes. Again, not all the way along. Like that. And we're also going to use this to highlight the central part of the blade. Like so. And then we also want to pick out the edges. Of the kind of inner stuff. And then finally with the Baharoth Blue, what we're going to do is going to use this to draw in the lightning. And so with that now done, we're then going to take some thinned down Corax White. And we're going to use this to add a little bit of spot highlighting. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little dot of this at the end of each of the power nodes. We're going to add this on the corners. of all the stuff in the middle. We're going to add a little bit of this at the tip of the tang and over the kind of top third, or the sharpest third of the blade. But in addition to that, as we go onto the blade itself, we're going to add little dots of Corax white where the lightning intersects with it itself. Like so. And then, of course, we do have the hair and those little ropes here and there that we're also going to highlight with the Corax white. With that all done, there's just one last thing left to do. Well, two last things left to do, but the first of them is to take some thinned down flayed one flesh and work on this gentleman's face. We're just going to pick out all of the facial features. With that flayed one flesh applied, we're then going to take a tiny amount of Black Legion and apply this over the top of the eyeballs. And with that Black Legion applied, we then want to take the teeniest, tiniest little dot of Screaming Skull. I want to apply this in the corners of the eyes. So with that, our Custodes are now, well, fully painted. The only thing left to do is their bases. Now, as mentioned, I still don't have the flight stand for the Caladius yet, so we're just going to have to plow on with these. And, well, we're going to paint these in very, very simply. And, well, I'm just going to pop these to one side. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking some Cygor Brown, and we're going to apply this over the top of any soil. Now, some of them have it, some of them don't. These are, for those who don't know, the Sector Imperialis bases. These are the 40mm ones. That's Cygor Brown applied. We're then going to take some Terradon Turquoise, and we're going to apply this to kind of the inside of panels. So wherever you have like this kind of grating stuff going on, I'm going to apply that just here. Like this. With that all done, we're then going to take some Skeleton Horde. We're going to apply this over the top of any large paving. In some instances, like on the Galatus's base, we have some kind of extra painting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some Basilicanum Grey. I'm going to use this over that stuff. So with that Basilicanum Grey applied, what we're then going to do is we're going to take two colours, Balthazar Gold and Iron Warriors. I'm going to use this to essentially paint in all of the remaining details. Now this isn't a mix, these are just two separate colours, but what we're going to do is we're just going to basically chop and change as we go around, picking out what we want to be these different colours. So it's really a case of just kind of choosing based on what colours sort of work well next to each other. So for example, the silver wouldn't look great next to the Basilicanum Grey. So we're going to apply the Balthazar Gold over these kind of metallic pieces. Like that sort of thing. However, on the other side we've got the Skeleton Horde. So there we're going to apply Iron Warriors. So with all of that done, we're then going to take a roughly 3 parts Lamium Medium to 1 part Black Templar mix. I'm going to use this to shade all of the Balthazar Gold, the Iron Warriors, and the Terradon Turquoise. Finally, as is tradition around here, what we're going to do is we're going to dry brush the bases using some Tyrant Skull. The saga of the Custodes is not yet over. The flight stand has finally turned up, and so we have the base. Now, I've primed it in black, and the colour we're going to be using first here is Mechanicus Standard Grey, and we're going to be dry brushing this over the top of all of the stone, but we're going to be doing this in a kind of circular motion to kind of buff it up, the colour, rather than kind of just kind of catching the edges. So we're going to take our dry brush and just going to start on this little piece just here. We're going to dry brush in a circular motion, first clockwise, then anti-clockwise. Just like that sort of thing. And then we're just going to do this across all of the bits of rock that we've got on here. So with that then done, we're then going to take a much more traditional dry brush of Administratum Grey, and we're going to just catch the edges here. And with that, we're then going to take Stirland Mud, and we're going to apply this over the top of all of that negative space around the base. Now what we're going to do when we approach the flight stand is we are going to apply this over the top of it. So for example here. Like that. However, we're going to leave kind of a small amount of space around the peg, kind of like that much. Just for the actual stand bit to slot into, so it's not kind of resting on Stirland Mud. Finally, once all that Stirland Mud is dry, we're going to finish it off in the traditional way around here by giving it all a dry brush of some Tyrant Skull.
So here we have it then, all the finished Custodes in one place. Our Caladius Grav Tank, our Galatus Contemptor Dreadnought, and our 5 Custodian Guard with sword and board. And this takes me to 2,000 points, which is awesome. And well, I best get them on the tabletop soon and start learning how to play 40k 10th edition again. Or at least try to enjoy it, as much as I used to at least anyway. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel and you'd like to support me further, you absolutely can do so by heading to patreon.com/warhipster, just like all of these wonderful amazing people have done. And alternatively, you could become a YouTube channel member by clicking on the join button below, exactly like these fabulous folks have done scrolling up on the screen before you. There are so many of you out there that it really takes my breath away, and I cannot thank you enough for everything you do, as without you I wouldn't be able to keep making these Contrast Plus videos. And if you really like this video and you want to send me a little thanks, just click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.